Hi, I'm Dave Merlino.
I'm Dustin Sweet, and this is the Know Their Story podcast. We talk to veterans about their time in service, returning home from war, and transitioning out of the military. Hopefully along the way we'll inspire you to do the same with a veteran in your life.
Because sometimes all it takes to make the world a better place is sitting down with a friend to know their story. All right. There we go. We're up and running again, Dustin.
How are you? Season 3, baby. It doesn't stop.
How is Taos today?
Taos is not on fire yet.
All right.
3 fires in the state, and a couple of them are right over the hill. So it's all
yeah. Your daughter's out there with the garden hose.
Yeah, it's a smoky day outside.
Nice. Well, welcome back, everyone, to the Know Their Story podcast. I'm trying to get that right after almost flubbing it 2 episodes ago.
You're doing great.
But another day, another episode. We are going back kind of a little bit to our roots with the movie. The movie was with the Air Cavalry Apache troop. They later on became armored. But we are talking with as we were talking right before we just turned on record, doesn't have the ring of naval aviator, but an Army aviator. Spent 6 years as a forward observer before stepping up to the big seat and becoming an Apache pilot. Served with 43rd ACR, and then the first, my writing sucks, first of the 229th, 3 tours in Iraq and 1 in Afghanistan. Please welcome Joe, and I should have asked about your last name, Wankelman.
There we go. Close enough.
Feel free to correct me. I always halfway through the introductions realize, I forgot to ask about something. But thank you so much for joining us today.
Absolutely. I'm glad to be here. This is awesome.
Yeah, and in honor of the Northwest Connections and the team of Destiny, I've got on my Seattle Mariners hat. I always have to wear a hat or the
this is the year, right? Because the guy, oh man, all right. So we're moving our company offices from Seattle to Spokane, and we're having this garage sale, and this guy comes by and he's like, "This is gonna be it, man. This is the team. This is the year." It's like mid-July. Yeah. Dave and I had just gone to a game, and we're like, "Man, this isn't gonna work out well for us." And he's like, "This is it. This is them." And
I'd been to 2 games right before that where the Mariners got 1 infield hit, and then they were no hit the next game. And this guy's like, "We're getting our guys back. This is the year." And we're like, "Okay."
I've noticed that every time the season starts, it's like everybody says it's the year until the All-Star game. Yeah. And after the All-Star game, everybody's like, "Yeah, maybe next year."
Yep.
Yeah. But we trashed that guy, and then they finished 1 game out of the playoffs.
Yeah, he was way more dead on than we were.
Find him for the lotto numbers or something. So, but anyway, Dustin, ceremonial asking of the first question.
Oh man. All right, Joe, how did you end up in the American Armed Forces?
Oh, that's got a lot of backstory to it, grew up on the in northern Colorado. I mean, just south of the Wyoming border. Yep. So grew up on a farm,
north of Longmont.
Yep, north of Longmont, Fort Collins, nice. Just north of Fort Collins. So, but with that, I struggled in school. It was one of those things that at the time I didn't realize some of the challenges I had in learning. And when it came to high school, I didn't know what I wanted to do. I mean, the community colleges were rejecting my application letters. And what I realized is I needed some discipline. I didn't have real direction. I didn't have real purpose. And I saw Be All You Can Be commercial and these individuals, living their, facing their fears and conquering and persevering. And I wanted to be that. And I wanted to be somebody who wasn't defined by the struggle, but could persevere through it. And so I joined the military. It would have been June 13th, 2000. So it was before September 11th. And as a forward observer with an airborne option, I decided to face 2 of my big fears. One is heights, and then the other one was, going out and doing stuff that could be, life threatening.
Yeah.
So
Yeah.
that's why I joined, and
That's awesome. How many jumps did you make?
I'm a 5-jump chump. I am. I went through it. It was the Army, and their infinite logic was, let's send them through airborne school and then send them to a heavy mech unit in Fort Hood, Texas. So it was kind
Nice.
of like, but I got my wings.
That's great.
I applied to customs on a southern border canine application and ended up at an airport in Seattle without a dog.
See, that
All
infinite wisdom makes sense, doesn't it?
Oh yeah. So, although probably better than San Ysidro in some respects, but so, but yeah, that's the government for you.
Yeah.
So Joe, we were talking earlier. You said you were in Baghdad in 2004.
Yeah.
Was that still house to house? Was that?
Oh yeah.
Yeah, that was like.
Of it. I mean, I was in. I caught the tail end of the invasion. Mainly there for the occupation portion of it, and we were conducting operations. This was when Anajaf was.
Right.
I mean, Anajaf in April was hot and heavy. Fallujah, Operation Phantom Fury in October, November timeframe.
Right.
And so those are some of the major battles. But it was a different world in 2004.
Yeah. It's a different game altogether.
Yeah, it really was.
Is that what led to you signing up for multiple tours? Like what caused you to say, yeah, this is for me?
So, yeah, no, combat isn't something that, it's like, oh, hey, I want to go volunteer for my next deployment. No. But what it was the team.
Yeah.
There was something deeper. It's hard to describe, but when you go through the suck with your brothers in arm, you gain this incredible connection. And it's a brotherhood. And I really appreciated that. It was something I didn't have in high school. I was kind of just off in my own world there. So to finally find people where we're moving in with the same purpose and the same direction, and I know they have my back and I have their back, was something that I've always hoped for, and I found it there. So I was willing to go back. I guess it's when you find something deeper than yourself. And you realize that you're standing for something more than your own selfish tendencies. And you look at an incredible country, and I had a kid. I had my first son right before I deployed. And all I could think of is I want my children, my son, to grow up in the land of the free and the land of opportunity. And each person I've got to the left and right of me is willing to risk their life to protect that. And so that's really where I found meaning. And that's why I went for multiple tours. Is I love America. I love this country. I love the team. Yeah.
Well, and I as a civilian, we always use that term with the movie, for lack of a better term. Having not been in the military or deployed, I always look at American Sniper for Hollywood, in terms of, I think people who want to attack the movie for being raw, kind of miss the point of the movie. And it's really a lot about PTS. And what always struck me is his line was, I've got friends over in battle and I'm going to the mall today. And I mean, is there a little bit, did that at least, does that kind of touch on it a little, or?
Oh yeah. Yeah, he hit it perfect. And it's hard. It's really hard because there's someone over there risking it all. And I mean, especially later in my career, we were able to, fold up the wings of an Apache, put it on a C-17 and be home within, 4 or 5 days, from doing operations to home in that time frame is hard because that there's still people out there doing mission. There's still people out there risking it, and adjusting isn't easy. Um, but it's hard to, yeah, it's one of those things where you want to put on the smile, you want to hug your kids, you want to, kiss your wife, you want to be there for that experience, but there's still part of you over there.
Right.
And everything feels so surreal. Like you open a door you're familiar with, but yet something about it is very unfamiliar. And you try to reintegrate into life, but life wasn't how you remembered it. It's things have changed, and it's a really challenging mental process that most of us, as I call them, abnormal coping skills. For me, abnormal coping skill was drinking a lot, was, spending money and doing whatever I could to really numb myself so I could try to just reintegrate in quick, or, fool myself that I'm reintegrating. But with that is I would go to those coping skills. I mean, alcohol helped me do my transition. Now it didn't help me. Let's say like this: it gave me the perception of help, but in the
Sure.
long run, I don't know if it really did. But yeah, it's that comment goes a lot deeper than most people understand.
Yeah. And you bring up, you're sitting there with your Apache, 5 days later you're home. I mean, we had one of the guys we talked to on the movie, he'd killed the guy, and then on this last patrol, 4 days later he's on the beach in Southern California with his friends surfing. And it's like, that is a weird mental switch. And it's kind of six of one, half dozen other. Like, yeah, you want to get out, you want to see your family. Do you think the Army could, or the military in general, it's not just the Army, like when a diver comes up, you have to decompress a little before you're allowed to come. Like, maybe it's going to Europe, and having a couple weeks there before you come home. Like, do you think something like that could help, or
Oh,
you know,
I've read a lot of things that say that could help. The Northern Plain Indians would have like a circle around a campfire, or a fire, and discuss about the traumas of combat. They talk about the different moments, and it helped them decompress before they reintegrated into the tribe. And so I definitely think that there's something there, but at the same time, we're taught to be tough. We're taught to not have weakness. And so admitting that, having that vulnerability when we're coming home is really hard. I did 4 tours and I never admitted it. Because, and just to be real, my '04 tour impacted me. I mean, what we did, what we saw in '04 was just wild. It was a different world. And it's hard to describe the different emotions, the different events, and in a way that can capture the reality of it. But with that, I mean, I went another, gosh, 14 years, completely denying the impact that ever had on me, and it's, I mean, that impact is it impacts everyone differently. But at the same time, it's hard. It hurt.
Yeah.
I saw things that I wish I could take mental bleach and not have to think about that anymore. But at the same time, the different, yeah, it's a challenge. When you go through it, I wish the military would give me a better understanding of what I need to do to survive afterwards. Because that they don't talk about. And when you're thrown into that environment and come home and have to define it yourself, you're going to take, at least I did, as I took the easy way out, which was drinking as much as I functionally could. I drank a lot. But drinking has an impact, and I wish they could have taught me how to persevere in different ways.
That's an interesting way of putting it. Perseverance is such an interesting trait, and you've done a really good job of, persevering into your civilian life, and it's one of those teachable tools, right? Like little successes go a long way to providing medium successes, provide larger successes, right? And it's one of those buildable tools. I wonder what kind of tools we could start building as we rotate people out, to start giving them kind of a format for building success in there.
Well, yeah, for me, and we can just hop into this. I mean, after my 4th tour in Afghanistan, I mentally broke. I went through. I just got done with my first divorce, which was just hell for me. And nobody wants to go through a divorce. I was missing my kids. Afghanistan, we took the Echo model. It was the first deployment for the Echo model, and so we're running at an op tempo that's out of this world. But that's what Apache pilots do. I mean, flying 100 hours in a 30-day rolling period is not uncommon, especially when you're in combat. Troops need 24 hours, 7 days a week support.
Right.
And Apache pilots, we on an AO, and so we're out there. If they're out there, we have to be out there because we want them coming home. So after three intense tours of that, I just mentally, the stress, everything, it felt like the world was caving in on me. Mm-hmm. So I drank harder. And the impact of that, ultimately, when I decided to get out, and it's not really even I decided, my kidneys failed, and my mind wasn't there. I knew something was wrong, but I couldn't figure out what it was. I thought I was weak. I thought I was, I started questioning my own strength. I started questioning my own sanity, because I wanted to be part of the team. I wanted to keep fighting. I wanted my family back. And all these things that were out of my control, I couldn't figure out where I was going wrong. And ultimately, I with perseverance, you have 2 choices. You either persevere or you don't. And I wanted the easy way out, so I attempted suicide, July 6th, 2016. And, failed at that, which is a good thing, because when I woke up, it was like, okay, I have no other choice now. I got to figure this out. And for me, it was my first question is why isn't my brain working? What went wrong? Where did the wiring go off here? And I had to start really looking at how each deployment impacted me. The bad habits I created from the deployments. I had to be honest with myself and look in the mirror. And so, when we talk about perseverance, I had to learn how to have victories again. I had to learn what success meant, and I had to get curious about myself, because who am I? My whole, especially in the military, my whole identity was the Apache. That's who I was. That's how I thought. That's how I operated, and I liked that. It was the first time that I was living my dream. I was a combat pilot.
They didn't let you keep your Apache when you left?
I wish. Yeah. The military kind of takes the keys back. So no, it's one of those ones though that that helicopter will forever be a part of me. And that was one of the hardest divorces I went through too, is having to say
goodbye. You have to redefine who you are, right?
Yeah. And that's what most that redefinition process is daunting.
Yeah.
Especially
as you're talking about, you woke up and you realized, all right, like there's only one, Dustin and I have this talk not a talk, a phrase, there's no way out, only through. You
Yeah.
know, there obviously was a lot of soul searching there, but did you look internally first? Did you start reaching out? Like, what was your process then when you decide, all right, there's only through? Like, how did you start breaking that down then?
Well, I had the typical symptoms. I isolated. And I just, for me in that isolation, I just started really examining as many moments as I could. And what I did is, okay, I have a volatile temper. I know that because I have multiple people who have told me, like, Joe, this isn't right. Especially my ex-wife. And so I was like, okay, where'd that come from? Like, I remember as a little kid, I don't remember acting like that. So where was this trait learned? And so I'd go back in history in my life and be like, okay, did I have it here? And I'd be like, yeah, I remember this argument or this fight or this reaction. And I'd be like, what triggered it? What was it? And oftentimes I felt abandoned. I felt dismissed. I felt belittled. I felt, one of those words. And we all have different words, but it was typically right around that where I was diminished in some way. And I had a reaction to it. And so then I'd go back even further. So where'd that happen? And some of these coping skills or these traits that I'm talking about happen in high school, happen in, middle school.
Right.
It was like, okay, so do I want to, keep that logic of a 5-year-old as a 37-year-old or a 40-year-old, And so I'd start to really make those connections. But I was afraid to take a step out. The civilian world is scarier than scary. I mean, I felt more comfortable in a combat zone than I did in Seattle. And so it was a process. I kept trying to find one little victory per day, and sometimes I didn't have it. My first victory was just making my bed again. And if I made my bed, then that day was a success for me. And as I always say, is you can't, they didn't just have a pyramid. It took one block at a time, and making sure you're putting that block in a position that you can build off of. And so I had to start finding those victories to even be able to go to school, or open up the door and take a step out, smell the fresh air, and then maybe go back in. It's not an overnight process. I had to go into a desert for a while and wander around as I was trying to figure out who I am after this life, after my military life.
Yeah, and that's an interesting point that you bring up on, the pyramids and like Dustin was saying, small steps become medium steps. I felt for a long time that it's obviously great to celebrate people's successes, but it seems like as a society, that's all we see anymore are people's successes. And, it becomes a big trap though. Like with our documentary, we were getting close to selling it. It's our first feature. We've got people saying it can go a long way. Like we've got Oscar voters saying it could go a long way. And people someone's gonna be like, oh my God, their first movie. And it's like, no, it's not. Like we've buried the practice movies we made before this from the internet.
Yeah.
And it seeps out. Like, I have teenage daughters, and I have to sit down and talk with them so much. Like they try something and they're not automatically good at it. And all they see on the internet is everyone being so good. And I'm like, no, like you don't get hired as the CEO. And it's such a hard battle these days to teach people success isn't the first step.
Yeah. Well, everybody wants the instant gratification. I mean, let's see. And it's interesting that you say this because I have to remind myself of this as well. I just graduated from the University of Washington and got my business degree. Well, I want to be a CEO. And why aren't people hiring me at that $250,000 rate or whatever? And the reality is that it took me 500 hours to feel comfortable in an Apache, especially at night. And my first flight in a helicopter, man, I'm glad I had an IP, because if I didn't, I would be bouncing off the turf, tumbling around. It takes time. You have to practice. And that's that inner determination. What's your grit? Are you willing to go through hell week and get through this and put everything you have into it? Because that's the only way you have those type of victories. And it's taking each day, prioritizing what you value in that day, and taking a step towards it, persevering. For me, I never wanted struggles, but I am so thankful for every struggle I've had in my life, because by persevering through that, I have gained a confidence in myself that, no matter what I face, I can get through it now. I don't need to take the easy way out. I'm going to fight, and I'm going to learn something. And that's another thing that I did, is instead of, having the thought process, one of my big growths after I got out was, instead of having a victim thought process saying, why me, and somebody's out to attack me, or, the world's so evil, etc. I had to change that into, okay, what can I learn from this situation? Yeah, I can't change this struggle. I didn't choose it. But at the same time, what can I learn from it? And how can I become a better person because of it? And so, I love my successes. I love the trophies, but I only remember those for a moment. The dopamine was great, but that was just fleeting. It's the points where I fell on my face and had to claw to get to that next micro inch that I remember. And that is where, my victories truly lie, is in those wins.
My dad has a saying. He says, "The scars stay with us," and I've always really loved that as an idea. Like the trophies are cool to have at home on the wall, and when you look at them, you remember that moment. But the scars are on your hands, and they're on your body, and they're right there, and you take them with you.
You do. Well, it was that kind of dedication is why I got to become an Apache pilot. I mean, I graduated high school with a 1.9 GPA. I wasn't the Tom Cruise. I wasn't the guy who got to fly the really fast and sleek looking F-14s. But with that, I never quit. I kept trying. In life, I have 3 quotes that have really defined who I am. First one I learned at about the age of 13 from Michelangelo. And if you look it up, it's not going to be the same because I have to always personalize them. But for me, it's, the human atrocity is not those who shoot for the stars and fall short, but those who shoot for a top of a hill and achieve it. So don't limit yourself. If you want to go to space and do something, you can do it. There's a way. You're going to have to dig deep. You're going to have to fight and claw, and it's not going to be the path you design, but there is a way. Next one was my dad took me on about 100+ mile backpack trip in Montana. Had a heavy backpack. I mean, when you're living off the land and you're going in there for a couple weeks, you got to take some stuff. And it was about a 100-pound backpack. And I started crying after, mile 5. This is in high school. And I didn't really have that, persevering spirit then. And so I was crying, and he sat me down, and he finally was like, Joe, sometimes you just have to put one foot in front of the other. You might not know where you're going, but you're going to get somewhere. So don't quit. And it turned into one of the best father-son experiences I've ever had. And so thankful for that. And then the last one is by Einstein, is you can't solve a problem in the state at which it was created. So if you keep running into that brick wall, you keep hitting that, same dead end, well, maybe you need to change your perspective. And that's what I had to do with PTSD. When I was getting out, the bottle wasn't working for me. I mean, it just kept putting me deeper and deeper into a hole. Now I felt better at the moment, but I always woke up with a hangover. And so I had to change my perspective, and I had to, go back and say, why am I trying to numb myself? What am I running from? And that's how I was able to take steps forward. That's how I'm able to live my dream now. I mean, life is amazing for me at this point. I still have my challenges, I still have my nightmares, but at the same time, I wake up every day with, this is a new day. This is a new hope. This is a new moment for me to actually experience life. So whatever comes today comes, but I'm happy to be here. So
that's cool, man.
Yeah. And, I just, my daughters are playing tennis for the first time. They wanted to play spring sport, and I'm so happy they didn't choose track again, go sit around for 6 hours to watch them run 2 30-second events. But they're on the C squad, just club fun. It's really good learning. And they usually, unless there's an odd number, they always play doubles. And it's been a really weird experience because they're ranked 1-2 on the team. So if there's an odd number, sometimes they'll play singles, and they're starting to learn they like singles because then you don't have to anyone let you down. Like, yeah, wait till you get to team projects in the business world, kiddo.
Yeah.
But I was watching yesterday, and like the former coach in me and the former, supervisor in me was just watching one of my daughters play with her teammate, and her teammate was just like, every time she made a mistake, like the racket was getting pounded, or she's like, oh, and like before the mistake was even like finished. And I was like, wow, she's like, her head game is not there. And then I was watching my daughter do I made a mistake, but time travel has not yet been invented to be able to go back and fix that. And it was just such a, as we've been talking, I've been thinking about that, comparing and contrasting, like what you've been saying of, you've got to keep moving forward. And I'm watching one girl just unable to move past like what's going on. And it was, I mean, there was no rapport yesterday because she could not move on past that. And it's such a small dichotomy, but it is kind of the same as life. Like, I can't change what happened. All I can do is look at that and say, how do I want to deal with that? And how do I want, what does today bring? Yesterday's gone, and it's just such a, as we've been talking, I've just been thinking about that. Like, I can't unthrow the interception in football. Like,
and to be honest with you, I was a girl who was pounding in a racket and not getting out of their head before. That's why I was as an Apache pilot. I demanded such excellence for myself that anything but just drove me wild. If I got a 99 on a test, and trust me, the community will attest to this. If I got a 99 on the test, I was not happy. But that was a symptom of feeling inferior. I mean, struggling in school for me was one of the most, it's probably one of the hardest times in my life. Is, as a kid, all I wanted to do was be smart. All I wanted to do was be Rudy. Honestly, Notre Dame was my dream school, and I wanted to play football, and because that's what mattered to my dad. And I really wanted to be something special. Him, because he it's a farmer's reality in northern Colorado, and that's hard work and wake up early, break the ice for the cattle, those type of things. And so where I connected with my dad is when I did something great in the sports side of the world. But education wasn't that. And he really
found your process really interesting of going back to those previous instances where you're turning into yourself, those decisions, and like reliving them and rethinking about them and changing your thought process by going back to them. And I know you want to be like, I always tell my girls, who do you want to have been? When you look back at it, when you come to a hard decision, who do you want to have been? Maybe the money's easy and it's an easy way to walk away, but in 5 years you're gonna be like, oh, I regret not doing this thing and building it out for ourselves or whatever. Because my oldest daughter was asking how Dave and I are doing things and like why we're taking our time with some things. And I was just like, well, because when we look back at it, we want to have done it the way we wanted to do it. And that's a big deal.
Oh, it is.
And getting to that place is a big deal.
Yeah.
You can actually ask yourself that question, you know.
It's a better way to live life, in my opinion, because you're not always reacting to the new whatever.
Sure.
You're able to say, no, this is how I'm going to navigate life, and this is what feels good to me. And by being able to live that, you gain a sense of fulfillment, because you're not having to constantly compare yourself with the Tom Brady out there. But at the same time, you're able to achieve your excellence in the terms that you define it as.
Right. And knowing that Tom Brady isn't happy being Tom Brady really helps with that, right? Like that he has his own struggles. Like everybody who's at the top of their game has their own struggles, because that's not actually the game they're trying to be on top of necessarily, right?
Yeah.
I think that's one of the secrets of adulthood.
It is.
And Tom Brady was not Tom Brady when he was drafted behind 7 other quarterbacks.
It's I'm always curious, what is the story that led him to such greatness? I mean, he's the GOAT, as much as I don't want to admit it. But with that, where did that drive come from? What is really the internal engine that is got him, waking up before everyone, going to bed after everyone, studying as hard as he studies? Is it truly what he loves, or is it because he's running from something? And only he can define that. For me, I was running. Me running to be relevant is what took me into the Apache. Now, flying the Apache is the greatest job a person I could ever imagine. I mean, I got to fly the most incredible human creation ever made, in my personal opinion. But with that being said, it was running from myself that took me there, because I wasn't happy with me. Right. Now that I'm on the other side of that and defining my path moving forward, I still take those principles of excellence. I still take that persevering spirit, that grit into everything, but I get to do it because I want to, and that makes all the difference.
Yeah, it's a big game changer.
It is.
When you were flying the Apache, you ever play Ride of the Valkyries?
Of course. Of course. I mean, that or Enter the Sandman. I mean, that was probably, Enter the Sandman was the one that really would get me going. And I don't know, there's just a feeling. I fly that aircraft is like, I mean, you feel like you're in the ballet because you're moving so smooth and you're just hitting these air currents and you're going. But at the same time, you have such a sense of intense, power, really is what it is, that it's a wild experience. I mean,
well, did you ever have that kind of feeling when you're pulling up on an engagement? They've called in the air support, where it was just like, uh-oh, it's the Apache. Like, here I am.
Like, flying 25, 30, 50 feet off the ground, 150 miles an hour. You're hearing the chatter of the engagement, or of what's going on in the background as they're braking, or as they're hitting the mic. So they're in it, and you're just there to tell them, like, okay, guys, we're X amount of time out. We got you. Button up the hatches. We're coming in hot. And to be running into the fight like that over and over again, it's a surreal feeling. I mean, their lives really, I'm sure they'll fight out of it, but at the same time, we're going to make it different. We're going to take the fight on. It's ours now. And they're not going to mess with you anymore. And our presence, just being on the scene, enemies are throwing their guns down and running, because they know when we get on, we bite. And it's a unique experience in your head when you have that much influence over a battlefield. It's nuts.
I mean, it's so much just raw firepower that's given you, that you're given control. I mean, I had a friend talking about when he fired a minigun once, he felt like he had God's power in his trigger finger. I mean, what, like you were what, 22, 23, 24? How old were you? You're given all of this just raw firepower and told go out and enjoy war, or like
I was 25 years old when they gave me the keys. And it's this, yeah, it's, you have, I mean, you have a 30 millimeter weapon system underneath your underneath the helicopter that follows your right eye wherever you look within a plus or minus 82-degree field. You're able to shoot at, you know, roughly 625 plus or minus 25 rounds per minute, and each round is like throwing a frag grenade. And then you have, and that's just your gun, you know. Then you have your rockets, which my favorite was the flechettes, which expands a whole bunch of, you know, shoots basically a whole bunch of nails at the target, or a Hellfire missile. You know, choose your choose your weapon system. But the thing that was the most amazing and the most lethal was the pilot. I mean, the community is built with this reality of the guys on the ground matter more. They're getting home no matter what. I mean, there are so many acts where an Apache would take rounds to ensure that the guys, you know, who were pinned down could start moving again and getting out of the hell they were experiencing. It's a selfless community. It's a team-driven community that demands the highest standards. If you're plus or minus, you know, 30 seconds, well, for us is about 3 minutes on a checkpoint, it's a no-go. You have to be there. And it was, it's an experience that, you know, you don't really understand until you're there. We did a lot of heavy lifting throughout the last two wars. The community did. And there are a lot of pilots that's there. I mean, if you've noticed Lone Survivor or American Sniper, you got the helicopter pilot coming in at the end. And that's what we did, is we bounced from fight to fight, just going in and doing those type of things. I really love that community. Those every person in there, even the ones that I kind of struggled with, they had a selfless sense, and they were willing to put it all on the line every single day for the guy and girl on the ground. So,
yeah, so that's the draw.
Yeah. Or did you ever have the moment though where maybe one guy's firing at you and you're just like, really? Really? I admire you with your AK, but really?
Of course you have that. I mean, but they typically didn't fire at us because they knew if they fired at us, they were done. You know, they're game over. But the ones I liked where they were trying to throw their weapon under a tarp or something, you know, they're dropping their dishka, trying to hide it with some brush or something, like, okay, guys, we've been watching you for the last, you know, freaking 30 minutes, you know, doing whatever stupid you're doing, you're done. You know, or the people I love was, you know, over there where they're trying to dig up a road and they're looking to the left and right, like, oh, I'm being so sneaky as I put this 155 round into the ground. And it's like, yep, got you, bud. Goodbye.
Yeah, you've been hanging out above them the whole time watching.
Yeah, pretty much. Yeah.
So I want to go a ways back for something we started with, because you're one of the few people we've talked with. You said you joined in 2000, right before a very seminal event in American history. We weren't at war when you joined.
Yeah.
We had been at peace for actually quite a while.
Mm-hmm.
I remember watching 9/11 that day and thinking, all right, things are changing. What was it like inside the military to have joined in peacetime and to see that? Like, did you know right then your world had just changed, or what was that like inside the Army community that day?
No, I returned from Korea on September 10th. We were, you know, we did an exercise over there. When September 11th hit, it was just, you knew something was about to change. You couldn't tell, you didn't know exactly what it was. We didn't have the breaking or the information we have now. But when that second plane went in, it was like, this was an attack.
Yeah.
We have to respond. How we respond, you're not sure, but you just have this, we have to respond. I didn't have a clue what it would turn into. But nobody touches us like that and gets away with it. And so it was kind of a gut-wrenching moment, because I signed for the military. I knew that there was always a chance of going to war, but we were at peace for so long. War felt so distant. And then when it's there and it's on the doorstep, and you know that you know that you know, and you might not want to admit it, it's a humbling experience. I mean, I remember my first C-130 ride into Baghdad. I didn't know what I was getting into. I was 21 years old, I believe. And it was just like, okay, I didn't have any concept of war except for what I saw in the movies. And that was Black Hawk Down was on the comfort of my couch. And now I'm walking into it. So there was fear. There was definitely fear. But at the same time, it was amazing to see America unite.
Yeah.
It was amazing to see a country come together, and I hated that it was on that circumstance, but it felt like a country. And so that was also something I remember experiencing. It was like, wow, or when UK played the national anthem,
Yeah.
and it was almost, I remember experiencing that and being like, holy cow, people support, we're together. And so even though it was a horrific scenario, to see that reaction was, I hope it can happen again without that type of negative event.
Yeah. I mean, that day is what led me to my federal law enforcement career. So to quote The Hangover, thanks a lot, Bin Laden.
Yeah. Yeah.
So, but yeah, actually, so coming back I just definitely want to make sure I asked that.
Yeah.
We talked about, coming through and doing that internal assessment for yourself. At some point, because obviously we're here talking about it, at some point you decided to tell someone else what had happened. Obviously, I'm trying to figure out a way to ask it that's not like, well, what was that like? One of our guys was shot in front of CBS News in Vietnam, and the reporter asked him, what's it like to get shot? And he answered, what the F do you think? He said that didn't make the nightly news. But did you, once you made that decision, is what I'm really wanting to get at, once you made that decision to externalize that to others, was there what was your feeling like? Okay, I did it. Like, is that a next step, or how did that come about?
It took a lot for me to find somebody I trust, because I wasn't going to external or tell anybody unless I trust them, and trust was something I wasn't willing to give at that point. The person that I opened up to, he went through a lot. He showed up is what it was, and it was, and I'd push him away, and but he didn't give up. And so finally it was like, okay, for me at least, it was like, what do you want? And he was a dude that was just like, look, I get it. I've been there. I understand. Um, I get it. And I was skeptical at first, but the more we chatted about his story, the more I could relate. And when I realized that he had been through the same, different circumstances, but generally the same crap, um, I felt enough of I guess, enough vulnerability to open up on mine. And the first time I did, uh, you know, some people say they have this, lift of weight or, weight off their chest. I didn't have anything like that, but it felt like maybe if I can mention it, then I can manage it. Um, and so I decided to face that fear, and be like, okay, I don't understand exactly what I'm feeling or experiencing, but I just tried to contextualize it enough to him. And he started giving me words to explain, anxiety and just explain my frustration and help me take steps forward. So
It's really cool.
I struggle with people who don't understand. Like for me, opening up to somebody who has no contextual understanding of what it's like to see somebody uh, in combat, sacrifice everything. I didn't like that because like you have no clue, you don't understand, and so you're fake to me.
Yeah.
And that's one of the calls for our community, for those who have gone through it and understand. Um, at least for me, that's the only way that got me to really open up. And so I'm hoping that, I'm hoping that more of us can do that and be there for the next group that has to go through this crap.
Well, yeah, it's the return back that really needs a little more light poured onto it, because you guys, the thing that I see is guys rotating out of the Army who are self-sufficient, capable, able to show up on time, willing to do the work to see a long-term result, and like those are the guys that I want in my neighborhood. Those are the guys that I want to build community with, right? How do we reach out and make sure they feel wanted and needed, right? Because we just trained them to be self-sufficient and in themselves, and so there's a piece we can do as a community to reach out to them, but there's only so much if we keep that stigma that there's something wrong. There's nothing wrong. You guys just had different experiences.
And that's exactly it. They're reacting very normally to some very abnormal situations.
Absolutely.
And with that, it's twofold. Those, first thing I always ask when I go talk to somebody is like, okay, I get where you're at. I get is this really where you wanted to be when you were 5? Is this what you dreamed of?
Yeah.
Does this define, your pursuit of happiness? And of course it doesn't. I mean, when I was 5, I didn't dream to be in the situation I was in. I wanted so much more for me. And so then the question is if you're not there, what can we do? Because there is a way there. There's hope. Yeah. It doesn't mean it's going to be easy. We're going to have to persevere through some really hard things that we established as habits, but it doesn't mean it's impossible either. And so if you really want this, then let's talk. Let's have a conversation, because, my traumas might not be defined the same as your traumas, but I bet you our bodies are acting very similar. Right. And, we have this, our bodies naturally want to preserve and protect ourselves. And so is that really helping the situation though? And from that conversation, it's a team thing. Like when you lock arms, it's kind of like being in the foxhole with another person. You're there for the fight. and each of us needs to lock arms and start moving forward together. Now that doesn't mean that we can't take a knee, or we have to be back to that, super, self-sufficient, can
Right.
handle all my problems on my own. I can take care of myself type thing. No, but we show a greater strength by saying, hey, this is where I have some weaknesses. Um, I'm willing to walk with, I'm willing to call you battle buddy, but we're in this together.
Right.
And as you persevere through things, you gain skills, and you can help other people persevere through. And that's kind of like I always say, I start off is you got to find that victory. What is that one victory that you're never going to fail on, that you're going to do day in and day out? And for me, it was making my bed. So no matter what else happened in my day, no matter what else went on, at least I knew I had that, and I could start tomorrow with that. So
It's an interesting thing. We train these soldiers to be self-sufficient and individualized, so in case they get removed from the Corps. But there's another piece of it where everybody's doing a job in support of someone else, right? And I wonder if we could lean into more of that mindset as we rotate back to a civilian life, where we have this larger fabric that is America, and
yep.
out on the outskirts, we do have soldiers standing watch over us. And like, once
Yep.
you know that somebody's paying the ultimate price for you to, drive a Jetta to the corner store and get a half a gallon of milk because whatever, like once you're, that guy on the wall is doing that so you can do that thing.
Yeah.
So don't feel bad about doing that thing,
Yeah.
right? You're part of the fabric. So how do we, I always feel like, how do we, I'm still trying to put this thought together in a coherent way, but like, how do we prove that each part of the fabric is as useful as all the rest of it, right? Because you don't have one without the other.
And you're absolutely correct. For me, the way I honor the fallen is by living my best life.
Yeah, exactly.
They gave everything for life, liberty, and the pursuit of happiness. That means that I get to pursue my happiness in the terms I define. And not doing that is me telling my best friend who laid it all on the line, hey, appreciate what you did, but and I'm not willing to do that. So to honor his life, to honor Ryan's life, I'm going to live my dreams. I'm going to pursue my dreams. I'm going to fight for my dreams. I might get them, I might not. I'm in that walk right now. But I'm going to do it the best I can, because that is how his legacy lives on, and all the incredible things that he taught me. It's why I'm part of the Bonefrog team, is because our brand honors the fallen, and for me, honoring the fallen also is quality. We have to have the best. We have to be the best. We have to represent the best. And the team that Tim has put together is that. It's the best. It has that unspeakable, commitment to honor, that essence that you try to describe, but you always find yourself searching for the right word, because nothing feels like it actually captures what we represent. And so for that's what I look for. That's how I honor the fallen. It doesn't happen overnight. Like I said, you got to do the lay the bricks one by one. You have to have that willingness to say, okay, this isn't what I dreamed of. There's something better. You have to have and it's not easy, but you have to say, okay, I'm not, that there are areas that I could improve. There are things I don't know it all. And maybe, just maybe, if I reached out, I could make a friend that could help. I'd rather live my life with friends than alone. even though I totally convinced myself of the irrational. And when I was in isolation, I totally thought I was better being isolated than with friends. I was safer. Um, but the reality is that was just me lying to myself. That was me, trying to be this macho guy who doesn't need anybody, but yet inside is so broken and so alone and so overwhelmed with a reality that I could barely explain or and still struggle to. Um, that's that's uh that's what you have to do. Um,
That's the next step in front of the
yeah,
other one.
Well,
it
the
is.
human mind has an amazing ability to adapt and look around at situations and be like, this is fine. This is fine. I'm fine. This is great.
I live in a submarine now.
Yeah, yeah, exactly. Oh, I don't need to talk to anybody for the next 3 years.
Yeah, I'm great.
I'm totally good. Yeah.
The guy at the grocery store. It's fine.
Oh yeah, it's hard though.
And the best meme, not in terms of like funny meme, but actually like trying to say something meme I saw was, there's always the discussion of, thank you for your service. Do people like that? Is it awkward for them? It's different from person to person. But someone wrote, if you want to thank a soldier, be a person worth fighting for.
Yeah.
It's a pretty awesome. Simple thing.
That is so true. That is amazing. That is amazing. It to be someone that takes full advantage of pursuing your dreams, living life, persevering. Those are the people that I was willing to die for. I want to see them become something better. I want to see them improve and achieve the unthinkable. I have hope for humanity. And to be that is the best way to say thank you. Because that is what I was willing to die for. That is what I want my children to strive for. That is the beauty of humanity to me.
Yeah. I watched Saving Private Ryan. The first time I watched it was totally fine. Like, gonna make it through this. I'm a man. Until at the very end, he turned to his wife and said, "I need you to tell me I was a good man." And just everything behind that statement, I was like, gotcha.
One of the hardest things, because I've had a lot of nights where I told myself I was a monster.
Yeah.
I had a lot of nights where I didn't understand, and I did what I did because I had to, and I wouldn't change that. But if you really look at it, the person that's not walking on this earth anymore because of the situation, it's a hard thing to acknowledge. Because I always then question is like, what sequence of circumstances led to that? What traumas did they go through for them to rationalize that, that it's okay to act in those ways? Because at one point they were a 3-5-year-old, and I'm sure that's not what they dreamed of.
Yeah.
So, but that's one of those interesting questions in the world. It's one of those interesting, deeper thoughts that I haven't fully come to understand yet, I guess is what I'm trying to say.
Yeah. Well, and I think we've done a really good job of touching on in terms of for people coming home, rotating into civilian life, like your advice on how to come forward like that. We also like to add like any advice for family members or for coworkers, like how we tell people, as we've gone out and talked to a ton of veterans by now in terms of our projects, and we learned we're not there to solve any problems. We're not there to offer any answers. We are there to listen, and that's very simple act of listening is so powerful. But as a vet, for you, like, do you have any advice for a family member, a friend, someone who may be watching this? Because we do want, that is one of the things we want to be able to bridge that gap of understanding, to have more people talking. Would you have any advice on how a family member can help or be there?
Um, First and foremost, my heart goes out to him. It's not an easy place to be. Um, I didn't understand who I was. I didn't understand what I was doing. I didn't understand the challenges I was creating for those around me. I didn't want them to, I never wanted to, hurt them or put them in a place where they felt, pain. I didn't get it. And that's really, really hard because, I'm dealing with something I don't fully identify or understand, because I could rationalize everything in my mind. I could rationalize why I lost my temper. I could rationalize why I was drinking. I could rationalize. And the more I rationalized, the more it meant they were wrong, which leads to conflict. I didn't understand that type of love. And oftentimes, they didn't understand the own things, the own traumas they were going through. When the person you love goes to combat, that's a trauma. You don't know if they're coming back. They're living in anxiety. They're living in this unknown, just like the person who's deployed is living in an unknown. And so it's they have their own emotional challenges too. And so I guess what I would recommend is, in this situation, you kind of have to look at yourself. As I said, I have two ex-wives. And the thing that was challenging is, as I was going through my own challenge, my own struggles, in a way they were going through theirs. And the problem is our traumas would collide, and that would lead to the fights we got into. And I know we both didn't want it, but we both ended up being hurt by it and angry at each other for it. Hence, they're my exes. But the reality is we both contributed. And so when it comes to handling those who are coming back from combat, this is where compassion has to be present. And the only way that, and at least this is the philosophy that I adopted, is that for me to heal the situation, especially with my children, I have to become the best version of myself. I can't continue to have those abnormal coping skills defining my life. I need to strive to become something better. And like I said, I'm in this journey. I'm just taking steps as we speak. But that's my goal, because that's how I want to represent change. And I think that's for everyone in life is, I wish I could sit here and diagnose everyone and say, well, you're all wrong, I'm right. But that's not healthy. I mean, I'd love to justify that I'm right all the time. But again, sure, that doesn't bring anything. And so all I can do is take care of me. All I can do is be the best version. And I don't have to, when somebody is upset or somebody's having a challenge, I don't have to give them the power over me and react to it. And the better you can learn that, the better support you can provide the person that's struggling from their experience in combat. Because they don't mean to lash out. They don't mean to sit here and respond the way they're responding. They're doing it because, well, the world they're dwelling in at that moment is overwhelming. And they don't know how to handle it in a different way. they're responding. And it's what we were taught to do. It's what was programmed in me. And all you can do is really encourage change, because is this really what they dreamed of being?
Yeah, and there's been so much study of obviously with traumatic brain injury from the IEDs, and also with what the NFL is looking at with CTE, and such a rewiring of the brain. Combat itself is a rewiring of the brain. There are things you have to do to survive that you don't have to do at Safeway, hopefully, depending on what town you live in. And it's a rewiring of the brain that doesn't just we've the whole thing, well, you're back now, is we recorded the opening to the movie a couple weeks ago with a narrator. We haven't publicly released her name yet. Someone pretty cool. People will be excited. But the opening lines to the movie are, "This is not a typical war documentary," because I'm skipping over a couple lines, but to call it a war documentary suggests that the story is over when the war is over. You look at all these things like the story of the Vietnam War. Okay, great. The Vietnam War did not end, when we left in 1973 or when Saigon fell in 75, and just come home and be like, well, that was an adventure. The story does not end. There is a lot left to do. And the Army, I think, is better now than they were for those guys coming home, but there's a lot of unknown, and there's not any one specific way. There's not a one size fits all for everyone. So it would be surprising. Some people, I think, would be very surprised if they just said, hey, loved it. Anytime you're willing to talk, I'd love to hear it. That's such a small, easy thing. But we've seen it time and time again with the guys that we've talked to.
Yeah, really.
So
it's a life-changing piece.
I mean, I will still remember we were at the guys. The first time we met some of the guys was at a mini reunion in Vegas. And we're like, okay, we've got them here. We booked 2 different type of hotel rooms so we could have all these different backdrops to interview. And we just ran interviews while we were there. Known these guys for 24 hours. And here I am sitting. When you set up an interview for a documentary, it's camera, me, person, like a foot and a half away. And a couple of these guys had not spoken in 50 years. Ever. One guy had just lost his wife. I ran interviews for Customs with some very bad people. FBI hiding behind what, not easy things to do. Those 2 days in Vegas were some of the toughest interviews I've ever done. Like, it was just uncomfortable because I've just met this person. I've caused this breakdown. And as a filmmaker, I'm also kind of like, wow, this is gold. Like, but that night at dinner, like, as soon as we turned the camera off, I will remember one of the guys, actually, you could see it just, I saw the weight come off. And that night at dinner, smiling, laughing, and I looked at Dustin and I said, I think there's this is our real story here. So it's a very small act. Just sit, listen. And I thought I was a good listener before we started this movie, but when you're doing an interview like that, I have to give time for the editor to be able to cut in. And so there's the quiet moment where I'm counting in my head, like 3, 2, 1. And then, but that silence, more was said. And I didn't give any answers, but it's an amazing thing. And I encourage anyone, if you're up for it, it's a good thing. It's an easy, well, it's a simple thing. I'm not going to say it's an easy thing. That's a bit of an overstatement.
Well, to kind of bring it back, you mentioned earlier about the lady who was struggling at the tennis match. That's a symptom of something. Maybe somebody I hope somebody will listen to her. Because that's what she needs. It's the same with the person who's struggling to come home. The war doesn't stop. You don't take my memories away. But somebody who was willing to listen made the impact in my life that allowed me to take steps forward, and I will forever be grateful for him.
Yeah. And yeah, I've seen with the player who was struggling, I've seen it so much as a coach, and I've been there as a player. You're trying so hard to show everyone that you're really good. Like, I'm a really good player, and you make a small mistake and you want to show like you do not tolerate those type of mistakes. And it just is such a mask that you aren't allowing yourself to actually see how good you are. She was playing on the 1-2 doubles team. Like, obviously, like, there's some skill there, and she was not allowing herself to see that. And that transcends beyond the sports world so much. Like, people just don't see the positives or where they're at or the gains that they've made because they're not the CEO yet.
Yeah. How many veterans came home and put a mask on and aren't able to see how good they are?
Yeah.
I mean,
that's the real piece, man.
It is. I struggled.
Yeah. And that is what we want to show as much as we can with this movie, with this podcast, is to allow others to see, like, it's okay. I see these other people, like, it's, I'm not alone.
Exactly. And as I always open up, to whoever's struggling, is you're important and you matter. You matter to me. I'm here because you matter. And I want to see you win, however you define that win. I'm not going to say it's easy, but change is possible. So let's start taking those steps. And it's amazing. Everybody travels at a different rate, but it's amazing. You see, and like I've said, perseverance is the most beautiful thing I've ever seen. You see people persevere. You see them, redefine reality and realize how much they have to give and how lucky we are to have them on this earth. And those are the real war heroes, in my opinion. And I'm not taking away from any acts of valor or anything like that, but seeing the person who can break the chains of bondage that were placed on them, when they realize that they have what it takes, they can overcome. They don't have to be, defined by this reality anymore, is powerful. It's hard. I'm still working at it, but it's been all the difference for me.
It's a daily struggle, right? Like it's one foot in front of the other. There's no
way out, only through.
Exactly. No way out, only through. I love it.
Yep. So this has been an incredible conversation, Joe. Thank you so much. Usually I say to you, is there anything else we haven't covered? But we've covered so much so well. It seems like kind of a redundant.
Yeah, do we need to run a plug for you guys?
Yeah.
Hold on, let's plug Bonefrog for a second.
Are you going to be CEO now that you're out of UW business school?
Yeah, I was going to ask
No. Tim Kirkshank is the greatest leader there is. I mean, I couldn't imagine a better person creating this company. I'm looking forward to when he can come on the podcast and tell his story, because what he's overcome, who he is, it's vibrant. And so no, he's CEO. I'm working as kind of his right-hand man. We're a coffee company that is dedicated to honoring the fallen. The Bonefrog is an iconic symbol that represents a Navy SEAL who gave their life for the American way. They sacrificed everything for us. And so we're trying to give back. And it came from this idea of conversation over a cup of coffee. Their legacy, the conversations about who they were and what they represented and why they gave it all for us is a conversation we want people to have. And so great coffee. We partnered with a Seattle legend, Dave Stewart, founder of Seattle's Best. We would love for you to try the coffee out. It's, you can order it off of bonefrog.com. cd3-coffee.com. And I couldn't imagine a better team. It truly captures that what I was describing about the teams that I operated with as an Apache pilot, who Tim's brought around. It's the real deal. And our whole focus is about honoring the fallen and continuing that conversation in a way that represents who they were, what they stood for, and why they loved us so much that they were willing to die for our betterment. And so, lay it all on the line. Yeah, it's truly a powerful company to be a part of, and we love expanding the team. And so every consumer, every person, we're creating a team mentality, and we love you guys, everyone who's listening, to be a part of it.
And does Tim make everyone have a U.S. Navy sign in every office, just as a reminder? Or?
No. Right now, this is the main office, but don't worry. When we have our individual offices, you'll see a whole bunch of Apache pictures, of Apache supporting the SEALs.
Nice. Yeah. Well, thank you so much. I am going to do my Zoom face. Go ahead and stay on the line. We'll do a little wrap up after we let the audience go here. Got to make sure.
Thank you so much for being on today.
Thank you. Thank you for this conversation.
Here. No, definitely. Yeah, it's been wonderful. Dustin, do you have a joke you can tell that I can cut off? That's my greatest joy every week.
Oh yeah, let me start by I'll give you the opening here, and then that's right about there is when you're going to cut me off.
Yep.
You've been listening to the Know Their Story podcast. If you made it this far, we must be doing something right. Let us know by subscribing to our channel.
And think about sitting down with the veterans in your life, because saying thank you for your service should be the beginning of the conversation, not the end.